Welcome to this EDUcast, Global Data and AI for UC Network Insights, sponsored by Versailles, who offers cloud-based service management, and telecom reseller. Today, we have Ross Williams, who's the Versailles Chief Operating Officer, and I'm Gary Auden. And as we do, we talk about what we're going to talk about. How does AI, artificial intelligence, apply to global data? Why that changes UC management? Why this matters, especially to the enterprise or the MSP, whoever is doing the management, and how this creates a benefit for the real world, especially the customer experience. So let's start with the first slide. Artificial intelligence, AI, is a common term. Ross, what do you include in the definition of artificial intelligence, and what do you leave out?
Well, Gary, AI is an increasingly common term, and a lot of manufacturers are starting to use the term AI to promote their products. And I saw one the other day, even just a television manufacturer promoting that their television sets now have AI. And I was quite intrigued by that. So when I looked into it, because I was thinking, how does AI apply to a television? In that case, it's really just replacing the remote control. So the infrared remote control is being replaced by speech recognition, and the television manufacturer is calling it AI. But in my terms, that's not real AI. In my terms, AI either replaces or augments a relatively complex activity that's traditionally undertaken by humans. So in the racing example we've got here, which may be Formula One or Indy cars, would be very similar. There are hundreds of sensors on those cars, and there's a lot of feedback and information and data going back to the centralized computing systems, and they're constantly looking at how they can make that car go faster around the track and do it in a safe way. And there's a lot of parallels between that, the complexity and the number of sensors in a race car, as in comparison to a UC or contact center environment, which are just as complex, and in those cases have thousands of sensors in play.
When you're talking about AI, and I think this is really important, you're talking about sensors and collecting information. How does AI need masses of data to be effective?
Well, it comes back to the old analogy, Gary, that the bigger the net you have, the more fish you catch. And if we stick with that race car example, imagine how much faster the advances would be if all of the manufacturers and all of the teams shared their respective information. So in that example, the data that's collected and the way it's processed is a closely kept secret between the teams. But in the cloud world, in the Versailles service management world in particular, the service management data is shared anonymously across everyone for the benefit of all of our MSPs and customers.
Now, when you look at the next slide, you have a word there, final difference. You've been talking about the difference on the slide. What is the difference?
The difference is about turning all of that big data into knowledge. And if you think about it in your own personal circumstances, and I know I get this all of the time, is that the answer to virtually any question you may have has probably already been found by someone around the world. And as I say, I do this all the time. If I got a problem with using a feature, on my phone or in my car, I jump on the net, just use Google, and in almost every example, there's an answer already there. Sometimes, there's dozens of videos on YouTube that'll show you how to do something. So we're taking that same approach with VSM and sharing that data, and we're sharing it anonymously for the benefit of all.
IT's been collecting data for years. How does that traditional data collection work in unified communications management?
Yeah, well, that is right, Gary. And traditionally, applications have been enterprise-based, which means the applications are only aware of the occurrences and the incidents and the problems and the solutions that have been put in place in one environment. So in those enterprise-based solutions, even if you build a knowledge base, you might start with the manufacturer's knowledge base and expand upon that. You might run that application for years or decades. It's actually very limited in scope. The new, more modern service management applications that are cloud-based looks at everyone else's data. So in that race car example, everyone's sharing their information. So you might be able to apply a fix, for example, that someone else has applied who's completely unrelated and unconnected to you, and their business may even be on the other side of the world. And the result of that is that cloud-based applications simply make the people who are consuming them and using them more productive and more efficient, and it frees up time for them so they can concentrate on bringing increased value to their companies.
You're using the term global data here, and am I correct in assuming global data means you're looking at everybody who has this technology, not just simply one enterprise?
That's right. So there's literally thousands of customers we have on board that are all feeding in literally millions of data points every month. And there's a really good example inside the crystal ball there. So we can see as owners and operators of the platform that in 80% of cases around the world, UC platforms have some sort of issue with their configuration when it comes to that resilience and that survivability. So to address that, as owners of the service, our developers have focused the AI engine on the configuration side. So in that example, in Configuration Manager, now when you look at a schematic diagram, you can see if your failover is going to work correctly, if it is needed. So the only thing worse than having no redundancy, no resiliency, is having that extra gear, having that extra configuration, but not having it in a position when it's going to work when it's really required.
Global data delivers a tremendous amount of information to AI. What do you mean by masses of data? How big is that, and how does it help in making decisions?
Well, as we can see on the slide there, we have thousands of customer sites under management around the world, with all of those data points pouring into us every second of the day, 24 hours a day. In fact, over 12 billion individual pieces of data we pick up every month. And there's some examples on the slide of the type of information that can be gleaned from that, and some of it's really, really surprising. The fact that across our massive database of customers, it is growing all of the time. Voice quality is actually reduced over the last 3 years. So the people that tend to have our service, of course, enjoy good voice quality, but the new people coming on board, the new customers coming on board, are actually coming on board because they've got problems. And as I say, voice quality is getting worse. And the other thing I find really surprising on this slide is that SIP introduces the ability to present multimedia communications into UC and contact center environments, and we can see there that it's just really not being taken up. 0.8% of all traffic is multimedia, which is really surprising to me.
You've given us an idea of the data that's out there, but you use the word gems here. Where do we find the gems that help us do UC management?
One thing we've found about over the years that we've been doing this, Gary, is that there is no real silver bullet, and there's no particular piece of data that's of global interest to everyone. But what we do find from the masses of data that we pick up, there are some real gems in amongst there. In particular, when you've got in these UC environments, you've got virtually every device that's acting as an agent for you. So every endpoint can act as an agent and provide you with some really valuable information about the customer experience or the interaction and the quality of interaction that they've had. Right, as you can see on this slide, there's dozens of ways of getting information, and this is certainly not all that we use, but this is a classic unified comms contact center environment. All of these areas can be picked up, and the interesting thing is that in the vast majority of these cases, these are open standards, or if there's an API, it's a published API that can be consumed. And what you actually need in behind here is you need not only the ability to pick all this information up, you need the ability to store that and process it. And the only place you can do that really and handling data of this size and this volume as it comes in is in a cloud environment.
You have the term big data engine here. How does it relate to AI?
Well, as I say, I mean, the cloud's really the only place you can do this. So, there is thousands of servers that are at our disposal inside Microsoft Azure, and we do expand and contract the number of servers and the amount of storage and horsepower that we have in that cloud environment. And you can see some of the statistics there that we're processing. So this is just 1 month of Versailles Service Management in action. So we're close now on 500 million calls being monitored for user experience every month. But there's a bunch of other stuff there too. The 1.2 million channels for capacity utilization, and increasingly those channels are becoming SIP-based. You can see there's absolutely massive data that we process in a single month.
How does AI get to the root cause of problems faster and more accurately than humans?
Well, in the last year or so, we've introduced our AI engine, and represented by that little bot there. But in fact, AI in our case is not bot-based at all. It's built into all of the code and everything that we do. The AI engine is named Alex, and Alex does things simply that humans can't. And by that I mean Alex is not undertaking anything that humans can't and don't do, but Alex does it at the rate equivalent of literally hundreds of humans. So we've got the power of Azure behind us. We have those thousands of servers at our disposal. And using that horsepower, we can take an entirely different view that normally restricts humans. So, for example, when you're troubleshooting a call quality problem, like in this example, a human will get a report through from a service desk and will dig through mountains of data, and they'll try and find that call, which can be challenging in itself. But provided they find that call, then they'll start looking into all of the the associated data, the network performance and jitter, packet loss, latency, and so forth. But what we're able to do with our AI engine is not just respond in the same way that a human does. So what Alex does is Alex looks at all of those troubleshooting factors, so all the stuff that you would normally do as a person to troubleshoot. But Alex does that for every single call, good, bad, or indifferent. And because we have all that data, that huge amount of data that results from that, we can see the common characteristics. So we can see the characteristics of a good stream versus a poor stream, and then recommendations can be made using that information. And that, bear in mind, that information doesn't just apply within your enterprise. That information applies to the almost 500 million calls that we look at every single month.
You've been using the terms global data, and now we have the term local data. How do you combine those two to create insights?
Well, Alex does share global insights, and through our web portal now, there's recommendations made and benchmarking and so forth, and Alex puts those to the foreground for our customers and our MSPs. And the insights that Alex gains can also be used to uncover opportunities. And it really staggers me the 600 or 700 million SIP sessions that we look at every month. As I mentioned before, 99.2% of them are audio only. And to me, that represents a huge opportunity for telcos and MSPs and customers alike to rationalize multi-channel communications. It's just an opportunity that's not being taken up.
Part of unified communications deals with customer experience. How does AI optimize that customer experience?
Again, we're taking the same approach with our AI engine to look at every single interaction with a unified communications platform or a contact center platform, because we have the horsepower to do it. Now, in this case, we're calling this particular exercise, we're calling this chasing the unicorn, because right now that single view of the customer experience journey, it just doesn't exist. No one has this, but frankly, Versailles is a better place to do this than anyone. So you've seen how we handle big data in terms of voice quality, where we look at every single stream, regardless of its quality, and pull all the gems out of that for building our knowledge. We're planning to do exactly the same thing for every single customer interaction into an environment. Again, using that big data and that AI engine. So in this example here, we're just mapping out information that we already have and kind of putting it together and building a picture. And overlaying this, we've also got the ability to monitor virtually every one of these steps from a quality of interaction perspective. So if there's any issues with a particular interaction, we can pick those out proactively and notify on it. So as I say, that's a piece of work that's under action at the moment, and it's a real space to watch.
You have a huge amount of data. You have AI. We're trying to do unified communications management. All right. How does this all work together to finally unlock this? Because in the past, an enterprise did it for themselves, an MSP did it for a few enterprises. What makes a difference here?
Well, it comes back to one thing, and you can only do this with cloud. Yeah, it's one of the real benefits of cloud. So true cloud applications like Reseller Service Management, where there's one application that runs every end customer in the world, every MSP, they're all on a shared environment where we can share that truly big data and bring that together. And that's just something that's been impossible to do, or is impossible to do with traditional enterprise-based systems. Only cloud environments have the necessary horsepower and storage necessary, to handle this. And it's a bit like, if you're running on an enterprise-based application, service management application, it's a bit like the original example we spoke about with the TV set, where you're really only just replacing the remote control. You can't do more than just dip your toe in the water.
Well, I'd like to thank you for the information today. Those who are interested in Versailles, this is their site, email address, their phone numbers in the Americas, UK, and Asia Pacific. They have a lot of resources online at Versailles.com, blogs, news, videos, webinars, podcasts, and EDUcast as well, plus their brochures. I'd like to thank you, Ross, for really providing some insights into unified communications management today.
Well, as always, Gary, it's a pleasure to talk to you.